A lot of people don't work in offices today, and we heard from some of the other sessions earlier that, kind of collaboration across distance can be quite difficult. So my role within the organisation is I'm a consultant, and I actually work with clients to develop these strategies. What are these new work strategies that we should have moving forward? Particularly as businesses are changing because of the disruption, because of the desire for collaboration within organisations. One of the first questions I always ask is, what do you mean? When you say to me, I want collaboration, what do you mean? And then I usually get the blank face. I really don't know. I just know I need it. I know it's good. I hear it's good. Everyone's talking about it. Let's have some. So just to kind of break it down in our definition, we see collaboration as 3 different functions, really. There is informative collaboration. This is kind of what we call the lowest order task in terms of collaboration sense. This is just, I'm giving you an update. I'm sharing information, and I can do that with many people at once, virtually and physically. I can just share information. So what's going on now? We're collaborating. I'm not really going to let you ask me questions, but I'm going to share some information with you. The next sort of collaboration is evaluative collaboration, and that is where you are making decisions around information. So you could be looking at data, you could be having updates, but you're actually using information in a team, in a group, to kind of make some decisions. That's more difficult, and also you need to have less people. Really, 12 is the magic number. Beyond 12, if you've got more than 12 people in the room, and I don't know if any of you work for those organisations where you have that Monday meeting with 25 of you in the room and you're all texting and doing something else at the same time. But really, when you want to sort of work together, beyond 12, it's very difficult. It's hard to participate, it's hard to add your point of view, and people start to switch off. It stops being really effective. So if you get to more than 12, make the meetings smaller, have different meetings. Then we come to the really good part, collaboration, and this is what we call generative collaboration. This is when you're a group of disparate people from different backgrounds are coming together to create information and content that they couldn't do alone. This is the hard stuff. It's also the high value stuff. This is the stuff that makes businesses big money. This is kind of the innovation stuff. The kind of when you're generating new ideas, solving problems in a new and different way. So that's what a lot of organisations want to do, but they really don't know how to do it, and they don't have a culture of it. So what they do is just have lots of meetings. And again, I don't know if any of you work for that kind of meeting culture organisation. It can be extremely ineffective. You go from meeting to meeting. You have no time to think and disseminate. What did I hear? What did it mean? Do I agree? So you can actually develop a culture of what we call groupthink. You are too exhausted, too tired, and the meeting was too big, and you were too switched off to really be present in the room and thoughtful. You didn't have time to reflect, so you just agree. The classic thing is, those big conference call meetings where everybody's on there, everybody's multitasking, which is a misnomer. We can't actually multitask as human beings, apart from low order. We can talk and walk, but we can't do deep thinking and answering an email at the same time. So those meetings, that collaboration, it's actually very unproductive, but a lot of us do it. So really, as we're thinking about collaboration, to make it really effective, we need to have a really great collaboration culture. And that led us on to a piece of research we actually did with Microsoft, which was really thinking about, we called it the creative shift. And you can download the research. I don't have time to go through all of it today, but you can get that from our website, steelcase.com, or from the Microsoft guys. But it was really thinking about how do we start to help organisations that really want to make that move towards that generative collaboration? How do we start to think about it? And how do we start to give them some ideas around bringing space and technology together? You heard some of the speakers earlier say, we wanted to collaborate, so we created a space. Space is really important when it comes to collaboration. Space nudges behaviour. It provides affordance in the physical space. Much like on a web page, we know where to look because of the browsers, we know how to navigate. That's how we work in space as well. And that can either promote or can stop collaboration. Think of that classic meeting room with a big table. The person's got the clicker and they're doing the slides. In that kind of situation, you're not going to get a really great all hands, everybody moving, great generative collaboration session. You've got somebody with a clicker, so they're being very hierarchical, and if it's in a certain culture, a masculine culture like the UK or America or Japan, particularly in America and the UK, where we're also very individual, it's about lobbying for a decision that's already been made. If you're doing that same sort of meeting in Scandinavia, it will be very different. The culture's different, they're much more feminine culture and much more collectivist, which means they are much more consensual and will work together to get to a mutual decision. So national culture really plays a key. So as we start to scale our businesses around the world, and we have colleagues and we're working with customers in different countries, the way collaboration happens is different. The way people behave is different. It's difficult to do it with the same culture, the same people in one room. Exponentially more difficult as we start to do it virtually around the world. So as we start to think about some of these great spaces that could support particularly the generative type of collaboration, we came up with an ecosystem. And one of the first spaces we developed was something called the Makers Column. And this is really a free-flowing space that allows people to switch between the different tasks they need to do for great group collaboration. Because the more that you work in a team, the more you need time to reflect, be on your own, disseminate, think, have that kind of reflective time. So spaces that allow you to get together, make work visible. That is key to collaboration. You have to be able to see the history of what's happening, the vision and the future of where you want to go, and kind of the messy workings of what you're working on. Also, it allows people to kind of feed their information and their ideas. They might not have seen it before. So in these great open plan offices that a lot of us work in where we're not allowed to have whiteboards, it's really difficult to make our work visible. It's really difficult to collaborate because we don't even know what we're working on. So having spaces that allow us to switch between working in teams, rapid prototyping, which is a really important part of the process, and then having time to think, space where we can reflect, where we're not distracted, where we can really get into that moment of flow and help us think about it. Then we have high ideation spaces, which is where you're doing that kind of really rapid brainstorming and thinking space. And with some of the great technology that's come in, and particularly the work we did with Microsoft, looking at some of the new collaboration tools, really being able to use technology in those early processes of collaboration, kind of the replacement for the Post-it notes that we all love so much. Again, making work visible, being able to share, but in an egalitarian way, all being able to input into those meetings. And really, for this really generative stuff, 6 people. Beyond that, it starts to get really eggy. But the really powerful is pairing. So we call it a dyad, when you work in twos. So these aren't the same groups we're saying you have to work in all the time, but we do it all the time. We work in pairs and we don't even know it. It helps keep us on track, even if it's just the comment of, does this make sense? Am I going the right way? Somebody else saying, have you thought about doing this? That's a dyad. Then you might break off and go and work with somebody else. Which is why the third space in our ecosystem is Duo Studio. So that's a dedicated space where 2 people can work really competently together without disturbing the rest of the environment. How many people sit at an open plan workstation and their colleague comes and sits next to them and you have a really great collaboration session, but you're really kind of disturbing all the people that sit around you and they don't want to be involved, they're too kind of busy. So having places where you can work together, and that's both for those creative sessions, but also we see this a lot in agile teams where you're doing pair, duo coding and kind of working together in teams. Incredibly powerful, really kind of saves the amount of mistakes that happens. Great collaboration should remove duplication and should get to that kind of solving that problem in the best possible way. You then need some of these spaces for yourself. So you need places to focus and you need places to get respite. Because the other thing with collaboration is it's hard. It takes a lot of energy. So you need to be in a good sort of physical and emotional place. You need to have good levels of well-being and engagement. And so there are many, that's a whole kind of research topic in itself, but a couple of tips. Movement. Our brains need oxygen, and the only way that they get oxygen is when you move around. We also need a lot of water, access to natural daylight. So spaces that allow you to activate your body. So when you're doing that idea generation, spaces that allow you to stand and move and get involved, really powerful. Don't kind of get the same feeling when you sit around a boardroom table and you're kind of hunched over your laptop. You don't breathe properly. A lot of people suffer from what we call screen apnea. When you spend a lot of time looking at information on the screen, you stop breathing. You'll experience that if you do a lot of checking social media. As you get that kind of rush of dopamine, you stop breathing. It makes you very tired. Take breaks. I was a bit disturbed when somebody said we like to lock our people in the room and just get them to collaborate for hours on end. You need fresh air. You need time to reflect. You need time on your own. It's really, really key. So I don't have very long today, so that's about all I had to say. But just to finish on is also to say that as you start to work virtually with collaboration, it does start to get more difficult. You often, or people can suffer from what we call presence disparity. So the experience of when you're trying to collaborate, you have physical people in a room, and then you have people either dialing in via different types of media, they get a very different experience. So when we're collaborating, what's really important is we are intentional about it, and we call them etiquettes. So when we're working with high performance teams, we get them to write a team manifesto. What are the rules that you're going to work together and stand by as a team? What are your roles and responsibilities? And this sounds obvious stuff, but how many people work in teams and you kind of walk out and then you go, I'm not sure where I am here, and I'm not kind of sure where they're there, but I've been asked to come, so I'm just going to attend these sessions anyway. They kind of just turn back into that rolling meeting. So having a really good sense of why you are working in this team, what is the objective and the output, what is the history and the context that led to this, and how are we going to work together? What is my commitment to this team that I am going to deliver? Because really on that high order collaboration, the real key is trust. Social capital. You are going to trust that everybody's going to deliver and work equally well together. And if you don't have an agreement about that, again, it can be physical when you're in the room, but as you start to pull people in that are virtual, it starts to become really difficult because they've had think about it. You've got a telepresence. We've all arrived today, we were all soaking wet. So a lot of people made comments about the weather and the rain. We could see it. As soon as you go virtual, you kind of lose sight of that. You have no sense of the journey that somebody took, the kind of situation, the mindset that they came into when they walked into the room. And weirdly, we kind of lose all our social graces when we work virtually. We forget to ask those questions. So as we start to work virtually and physically, you do need a slight different set of rules, and I don't say rules and regulations, but etiquette, sort of common sort of a framework in which you work so that everybody can work effectively together, because that's really what it's about. So that's all I've got time for today. Thank you so much. Thank you.